Stalker from Plentyoffish. First off, I like to say I'm telling this story from a girl's perspective, and I was 18 at the time this happened. I was in my second year of community college when this whole thing started, and was enjoying a little bit of new freedom from my parents, who were very strict homeschooling me. I had just gone out of a relationship and was looking to meet someone new, but wasn't too thrilled with the whole immature and rowdy guys I came about in college. I wanted someone a little bit more mature. I had heard about online dating and decided to give it a try. I was young and naive, and while I understood the dangers of talking to people online, I didn't think anything bad would happen to me. So, I made an account on Plentyoffish. It was a free dating site, and there were millions of users on it, so I figured I might find someone that way. One of the first people to message me was a man who I'll call Dave. He was 10 years older than me, but he looked cute in his photograph. He seemed nice and sincere from the messages he sent me, so I decided I would talk to him. He said he was an EMT, and he had his own house. He seemed like he had his life together, which I liked. We seemed to be getting along well, and we talked via the site's instant messenger for a few days. Then we moved to texting. I was becoming curious if he had any more pictures of himself, as he only had one photo online. So I asked him, and he sent me a picture without his face. A picture only of his abs. And he wouldn't send any more of his face. This should have been a red flag, but being 18 and coming from a somewhat sheltered homeschool family, I didn't think anything of it. A few weeks passed of just casual chatting, and he started to become more and more insistent on meeting me. I told my mom about it, and she said I couldn't go unless her and dad came along to meet him for the first time, to make sure he was okay, because you never know about people these days. I was super annoyed and embarrassed that I had to drag my parents along on a date, but I obliged, and Dave agreed to meet us at a local Italian restaurant for dinner. When the day came we were going to meet him, we arrived at the restaurant and got a table. I had gotten a text from Dave saying he was on his way, so we just ordered drinks and waited for him to arrive before ordering our meals. Time ticked on, and on, and on. I told my parents that if I did not like him, I would order a salad and that would be the cue to get out of there as soon as possible. Finally, after over an hour of waiting, he showed up. My heart sank. I barely recognized him from the photo he had online. He was at least 100 pounds heavier, and his face looked a bit more weathered. It was obvious he had been deceptive about his looks, as he definitely did not have a six-pack, nor was he good looking. He greeted us, sweaty and flustered because he was so late, but gave my dad a strong handshake, and was very friendly to my parents, which they liked. Needless to say, however, I ordered a salad when the waiter came back. My parents basically paid no mind to my cue to speed up the dinner, as they seemed to enjoy talking to him. The night was okay, but I really wanted to get out of there as soon as possible. After 3 really awkward hours, we said goodnight to him and went home. I immediately texted him afterwards and told him that while I liked him as a person, I wasn't really interested in a relationship with him. He seemed sad and really wanted a chance, so he suggested that we remain friends and hang out sometimes. Reluctantly, I agreed, and my parents let me go out with him because he seemed okay. So, we started meeting him places. We would go to the mall or to the movies, things like that. Then he started meeting me at my school to hang out with me during my downtime. However, I started to feel kind of weird about it. Wasn't he supposed to be an EMT? when did he have time to work? It made me feel uneasy that he was coming to see me nearly every day. I mentioned the situation to my mom. It raised a red flag to her, and she advised I stop hanging out with him. I informed him I didn't want to be friends anymore, as I felt like I was leading him on, and I wasn't really interested. He seemed okay over the phone, and I thought it would be the end there. Wrong. He started texting me and calling me non-stop. He would leave about 20 to 30 text messages a day, begging me to hang out with him again. He would call and call, seeming to get more angry in each voicemail he left me. When I ignored those, he would send me emails or message me on Plentyoffish. I told him to leave me alone, just in case ignoring him wasn't enough of a hint. He wouldn't. He was beginning to scare me. He told me how he had friends in the police department and Interpol, and that he knew where I lived. He threatened to come to my school or come to my house and claimed he knew where I was at all times. I was terrified at this. I would sometimes see a strange black car driving slowly by, and I would hide and keep the blinds shut when I was home alone. To this day, I'm not sure if it was him or if it was just a coincidence. I began to drive my mom's car to school, as he knew what my car looked like. My mom had kept her car in the garage all the time, so there was no way he knew that car. I also began to park in a different area at the school, so that it would be less likely for him to find me and follow me home. I eventually got a new number, so the text messaging and calls stopped. That did not stop him from emailing me and instant messaging me for new accounts he made, even though I had blocked his old ones. I basically had to watch my back and live in fear of this man for about 6 months. It finally stopped after that. About a year or so after all this transpired, I Googled him. I thought, if he is this creepy, I wonder if he has a record. Well, it turns out, he had been arrested and charged with child pornography recently, and he had been thrown in jail after violating his probation by trying to get a job working with children at an amusement park. I read some comments on some of the articles about how he had stalked and threatened other women too. Turns out he never was an EMT, by the way. I'm so glad he's behind bars where he belongs. So perverted, scum of the earth, child porn addict stalker. Let's not meet. Ever again. Cliché online predator story. I've been lurking this forum for a few months now, and I was just reminded of something that happened to me in my teenage years. So I made an account just to post this. 6 or so years ago, when I was about 15 or 16, I came out as gay. I only knew of a few gay or bisexual people. None of them were my age, and I was really lonely. I was also super naive, and I was taught that these things only really happen to women, so I felt never at risk or scared. I don't remember how or even what it was called, but I found a site where you can meet other gay or bisexual men. Was that stupid of me? Incredibly. Did I still do it? Yes. I had been browsing that for a few days and waiting to come across someone more of my age, as it was mostly 30-plus-year-old guys. Someone a few years older than me, but fairly close to my age, started messaging me, and I was really excited I could finally talk to someone my age that was kind of like me. He told me he lived in Seattle, and he only had a few pictures on his profile, but being naive, fairly trusting, and kind of desperate for friends that could really kind of understand, I didn't really care. We spoke for a few weeks, and we ended up dating online. It was so ridiculous and stupid, but he never gave me any weird vibes. However, When I asked for more pictures of him, he would make up excuses as to why he couldn't. And I, again, didn't really care because I just wanted friends and I was naive. But he had no problems asking me for pictures, and I willingly sent them, being the stupid teenager I was. I thought it was kind of weird that he always had an excuse. We had been dating for 2 weeks now, and it was obviously such a serious relationship that he told me he had to tell me something. I figured he was breaking up with me or he had cheated on me or something, but I was very wrong. He revealed to me that he was a 41-year-old man pretending to be 17. He had originally found my profile a while ago, and when I didn't respond to him, he made a separate account to pretend to be a 17-year-old so he could make me like him, and then reveal his age to me after he got me to like him, hoping I'd still want to be with him. I immediately blocked him on every single site, but I couldn't figure out how to block his number on my phone. So he started blowing up my phone. He did this for days and days, and he ended up making me feel so bad, I started replying to him. That was a huge mistake. We had sent a few texts back and forth, and he manipulated me into not telling anyone this happened. He told me things like how he was lonely, depressed, his mom had dementia, and that he cut himself. To also manipulate me, my mom didn't and couldn't always pay my phone bills on time, and I had other friends I wanted to text, so he'd buy me phone cards on the condition that I spoke on the phone with him for 5 minutes every time he did. I knew it was wrong and weird, but my mom was already not accepting of my sexuality, so I never told her in fear of her getting angrier or giving her a worse idea of being gay. And as I stated in the beginning, I never knew this was legally wrong to happen to men because of what I was taught, and I didn't know if the police could do anything about it. Then, he also told me that he lied when he said he was 41. He was actually more like 45. That should have been the end of that, but it wasn't. This continued on for like a year, and eventually I got a job. So he didn't speak very much. Maybe every 2 months I would get a text from him, and most of the time I would just ignore him, or we'd have a, "Hey, how are you? Good," kind of conversation. However, one morning when I was a few months shy of 18, I was really lonely and just started talking to him again, after getting a text from him. We spoke for a few days, and he told me about his mom having dementia, and how it was depressing for him because she was getting worse, so that I'd feel bad for him. He then manipulated me into talking to him on the phone again. Nothing was really weird on that phone call. We texted for a few more weeks, and he told me a lot of weird things. First is, he wanted to marry me. I tried to act flattered, but I obviously wasn't interested. Then he told me that he wanted to take me away to his mom's place, near the ocean, and that we could live together forever, and that he would take care of me financially. That should have made me freak out and stop talking to this creep, but I just laughed it off. I don't remember why. The final straw for me was that he had bought me a sweater or something and wanted to finally meet up to give it to me and tried to manipulate me into meeting with him. I started getting really freaked out and made up all these excuses as to why I couldn't go see him. And then out of the blue, he tells me he's coming around to my area and wants to meet me, and again tried manipulating me into telling him where I lived. That's when I finally told him off and said how disgusting he was and that he shouldn't be preying on young kids. He tried to pull the "but you're almost 18" thing and tried to justify what he had done when I was 16. But I was just done. He begged me to still be his friend and not to do this, but I have had enough of him. I could clearly see now. The rain has gone. He was weird and gross and a pedophile. I told him to stop texting me, and I never heard from him again. I changed my number about 4 times since then, and I've even moved from that area to a different province. But this still gives me the chills. Like, what if he was better at manipulating me, and I had agreed to meet him? I ended up never calling the police or anything, and I really regret it. It freaks me out that he could be doing this or was probably doing this to other kids. So, creepy 45-year-old man pretending to be a 17-year-old. Let's not meet. I'm pretty sure I went on a date with a sociopath. This is a story of how I'm pretty sure I came in contact with a sociopath. It happened a little over 2 months ago, so it still kind of creeps me out. Brace yourself. It's a bit long. It was early October, and I've been trying my hand at online dating again. Usually I don't have an issue with it, seeing as I met both of my exes online, and nothing but sweet, generous guys, just looking for love or what you have. So, being my single self, I set up a date with a guy on a Sunday evening for some coffee and chit-chat. It wasn't anything too big, and we would be downtown. I had been texting him all throughout the day, and he seemed sweet and intelligent. I was pretty excited since I thought that we were really going to hit it off. We agreed to meet around 6 at Starbucks. Hell yes. 6 rolled around, and there I was, sitting on the bench outside, drinking my caramel mocha. He showed up a few minutes late, no big deal. When he got there, he was dressed real nice, looked like his pictures. Everything was going well. He seemed shy at first, but then again so was I, so I didn't really think anything of it. We began to talk, and that's when I noticed it. At first I thought it was just how he talked. Perhaps it was because he learned English when he was 5 or 6. His English was pretty good though, so I wasn't sure. Everything he said sounded deliberate, as if he was scripted or he had planned it out. I remember specifically thinking he sounded like copy pasta. Maybe he said these things to every person or girl he met online. I brushed it off my shoulder as a weird quirk. Besides, he seemed really charming and sweet, and seemed absolutely into me from the get-go. I was smitten as this was more attention from a male counterpart I'd gotten in a long time. But something about him seemed off. Whatever my gut was telling me, I ignored it. The night wore on in a sort of wistful fashion. He was as into me as I was into him, and he did nothing but want to know about me and all the wonderful things I was doing with my life. I happily obliged for a couple hours, until I realized I knew absolutely nothing about him, except that he spoke French, which I learned from his profile page. So I began to ask him questions about himself. It was nothing too serious, just typical first date questions. Where you work? Do you like it? Are you going to school? What do you do for fun? Etc. No matter what question I asked him, he always gave me some weird, vague answer, and then changed the subject back at me. At first, I just sort of ignored the fact that he was doing it until after the 6th question. I flat out pointed out that he wasn't answering any of my questions. He seemed offended and tried to argue that, of course he was. I felt bad that I offended him, and dropped the subject. After that moment, I knew something was up. I ignored it still. Those rose-colored glasses were really hitting me hard. It had been about 3 hours now, and we decided to walk around downtown. It was a nice night out, and I was really enjoying the atmosphere. We held hands and such, and it seemed like we were really into each other. it was moving fast. Now that I think about it, it was moving a little too fast. And that should have been another warning sign. But no, I was blissfully ignorant. It was then that he asked me to come back to his place. Now, this completely turned me off for two reasons. One, that usually means that whatever night we just spent talking was most likely going to be a one-time thing. And two, the nagging feeling was still sitting heavy in my gut. I couldn't help myself and made a joke about how I wouldn't know if he was a serial killer or not. I was really debating this, and now that I look back, it should have been an easy no. After I made the joke, however, he got angry, saying that I shouldn't joke about those things, and it was really offensive. Which he then followed up with, in a sickly charming way, "I have a bottle of wine in my car. We could go have a couple of glasses and just hang out." I reluctantly agreed. Now a little scared and turned on. Damn my lonely womanhood. Damn it to hell. We left my car in the parking garage, and he drove me to his place. The moment I stepped foot in his car, I was getting the heebie-jeebies. It was a nice car, sure, but there was something about how clean it was, and the fact that everything smelled like lemon pledge, that bothered me. It was then that I decided to look up the signs of sociopaths on my phone, claiming that I had to do so for a friend. When it had been a few minutes, and I hadn't talked to him, he started to get angry, saying I was being incredibly rude for looking at my phone for just a few minutes. As he was saying this, list after list of symptoms were popping up right in front of me, and he seemed to fit them all. My heart dropped, and a million scenarios started to run through my head. "You idiot," I chided myself. "This is the exact situation your mother and your grandmother and your friends and everyone on television has been warning you about." I thought about feigning sick to make him take me home, but by the time I had reached that conclusion, we were already reaching his front door. It was a huge house in a really nice neighborhood. Somehow, that did not assuage my fears, and soon I was sitting on his couch as he poured me some wine. "Drink," he said to me. He sounded like he was giving orders to a dog. I lifted the glass to my mouth, and I could feel the liquid sloshing around on my lips when I stopped myself. I did not see him open the bottle or where it came from. I stopped. Finally, some sort of sense in me. Thankfully, as this was happening, his back was turned, so when he turned around, he thought I had drank some. "Did you like it?" he asked, staring straight into my eyes. I shrugged and told him I felt a bit sick, probably from all the coffee I drank. He frowned and acted offended again, but this time I did not give in. He wanted me so badly to drink the wine, but I didn't. I suggest he take my glass instead of pouring himself some. He got angry again, citing how rude I was being. I apologized and again told him I felt ill and that I would have some another time. He dropped the subject and took the wine from me. A little later, we ended up cuddling on his couch. I felt a bit better, as he hadn't tried anything weird, and we were simply talking about a YouTube video he was showing me. It was then that he wanted to show me something involving the video in his basement. Supposedly, he had a sound system down there worth thousands of dollars. I agreed to see it, but I told him I was going to use the bathroom for a quick second before we went down there. I went to get up, but his arm was just around my shoulder and he pushed me down. Alarm bells started going off in my mind. I tried, but he wouldn't let me go. I looked up at him, hoping he was joking, but he was just staring at me, not letting me move. I firmly asked him to let me get up, and he was reluctant to do so. Finally, I got to the bathroom and called my friend to tell her where I was and what was going on. She told me to get out of there. I agreed with her, so I returned to my date and told him that I was sick and that I had to leave, and that I was sorry to cut the date short. He tried to convince me to stay. He was doing everything in his power to try and get me to stay and see what was in the basement. I'm convinced now it was dead bodies. I argued with him for what seemed like 15 minutes before I told him that if he didn't want to drive me back to my car, I would call my friend to come pick me up. He reluctantly agreed to drive me back. So after he dropped me off and we said goodbyes, I went straight home to report him on the site and tell the mods how creepy this guy was. By the time I got home, which would have been way before he got home, he had deleted his profile. A few days later, I kept getting weird texts from a different number, and every time I asked who it was, they would never respond. I ended up calling the old number out of curiosity, and it said the number had been disconnected. I never tried the strange one as I was too afraid someone would answer. Other than that, I never heard from him again. I just hope some other girl doesn't fall prey to him.